Hello and welcome to this webinar. I'm Alexis Kingsbury from Spidergap. I've also got Julie Cooper from Spring Development on the line. Hi there, Julie.
Hi Alexis, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Really excited to be sharing the content that we've got coming up over the next up to an hour. That was all going to be around how to get the best outcomes from 360 review meetings. I know this is a topic that's had a lot of interest. It's something that we've been asked for from our clients, and so really glad that we're able to partner up with Julie to help deliver this. To make sure that you're in the right place, if you're attending right now or if you're watching the recording, then this is a workshop that's designed for HR practitioners and business leaders who are planning their 360 project. And specifically by the end of this workshop, our aim is that you will learn the 10 critical success factors for a successful 360 review feedback meeting. You'll know what impact a good 360 review meeting has on the individual and your organization. And you'll have a checklist, we're going to give you a checklist at the end of this session for preparing for your 360 feedback project. So, which will include everything that pretty much everything that we teach in today's webinar in a form that makes it really easy for you to make sure that you're doing it in the role, because there's no point learning a whole load of stuff that if it doesn't get implemented. First, give a little bit of an introduction to myself and to Spidergap for those of you that are perhaps less familiar. I'm Alexis, and in 2011 I co-founded Spidergap with my co-founder, Paddy Mann. I'm the picture on the left. I'm a little bit older, but slightly less chubby than I was in that photo. When we founded Spidergap, or just before we founded Spidergap, we were management consultants working with business and HR leaders on improving team performance. And when we were doing that, we were finding that when we used 360 feedback as part of the project, so it wasn't all projects, but in some of them, we found that existing tools failed us for one or more of three reasons. The first was that we found that reports were really difficult to understand. So you'd have lots of data, lots of pages, lots of scores, and you'd have like 30, being told, oh, you've got 72.8% in leadership. And it would give very unclear messages, and as a result it would need a lot of support from us, but not in a good consulting way, more in a sort of let me explain what these numbers are and here's why you should ignore this and so on. The second reason was that we found that the tools were really difficult to customize. So if we wanted them to adapt them to meet our clients' needs in terms of competency frameworks and so on, that was either impossible or very difficult or expensive, because often there's additional charges for them. And the third reason was that the cost and effort involved in running a 360 in most cases meant that if you wanted to scale it, it was just too expensive. And so we'd find that we're running projects like with organizations like Sony and AstraZeneca and so on, where they'd do a 360 on perhaps their top leadership team, and they'd say, "Oh, that was brilliant. That worked really well. I've got great insights. Our leaders are really excited about their personal development. They're getting much more focused on it. They're actually finding they're taking action. Let's roll it out across the rest of the organization." And at that point, we'd have to show them that the costs of the tools that we were using at the time, which often were sort of around the $100 per person mark, were fine for leadership, but weren't okay as you tried to scale and run it across team leaders or even all employees in the organization. And that left a very poor message to give to staff, which is that, I'm sorry, we value your development, just not enough to pay to use the tool that we use with leaders. So what we did was we went and with the idea of creating something to solve this problem, we spoke to over 150 HR and business leaders and tested ideas with employees as well to design a feedback report and a 360 solution that addressed those needs. And as a result, Spidergap now provides an employee-friendly 360 feedback tool that's got a feedback report that's easy to understand and use and helps people to relatively prioritize the areas that they need to work on and take and develop a plan to take action on that. It's also been designed to be incredibly user-friendly, so it's got a process that's easy to customize and manage, even when scaling, and particularly being able to reflect things like organizational competency frameworks or creating multiple different questionnaires for different roles in the organization is all possible in Spidergap. And we set up a pricing structure that means that it works at any scale. So it starts around the $69 per employee assessed, so the person getting a report, but actually comes down significantly as you scale across the organization. So once you get into the hundreds or thousands, that cost comes down like less than half of that point. So as a result, it really does work to scale across the organization. And so we've seen organizations, including some that I can see on this webinar right now, that have started with their leadership team, then gone across to their top managers and leaders, and then next level down, and so on. So we're very proud of what we've achieved because, by all accounts, I guess we now believe that we have the best tool for 360 feedback, which felt like a very lofty aim when we set that aim back in 2011. But the reason we feel confident we can say that is because we've designed Spidergap from the ground up to make it as easy as possible to get useful feedback, understand it, and take action. That's always been our focus, is how is this actually going to be used? There's no point in just delivering a report that just gets read. It needs to result in action. And I think that, along with some other reasons, is why we're now the top-rated 360 feedback tool on the Gartner review site Capterra. And we're still working hard to get better. There's lots of things that we're working on over the next few months and years, and you'll be seeing communications on those improvements. But we're very proud of the fact that we get great reviews based on the ease of use, the easy to understand report, the pricing, but also the support that we provide as well. And so thank you to everyone who provides reviews on that, and please do submit your own there as well. We're now used in over 134 countries, which I can never quite believe because I'm not sure I can list 134 countries, certainly not from memory. So it's always amazing when we look at where Spidergap is being used. And it's being used by fantastic companies like New Look and Maitland and Britvic and Autodesk and Cisco and Booking.com, and charities like Mary Stopes International and the Children's Trust and Médecins Sans Frontières. And public sector organisations like the European Commission, the NHS, and so on. So we're very pleased and proud of the fact that we're now used in every sector and industry, indeed in every continent that doesn't have polar bears. Yeah, that's been an incredible achievement. One thing that you might be less aware of is that, excuse me, particularly over the last year, we've been developing a selection of high-quality Spidergap partners who are consultants, coaches, trainers around the world that we've seen and have selected on the basis of them doing great work with their clients, working with organizations to help them to do their own personal development. And this is something that's very close to our hearts, indeed, as the fact that we come from a background of management consultancy ourselves. So we've got these partners that we're increasingly working with to support better results with our clients, and also to help them in working with theirs. And so one of the partners, one of Spidergap's partners, is Spring Development, which is where Julie is from. And I'm really excited because we've got Julie from Spring Development on this call and going to be sharing her knowledge and expertise in around personal development. And Julie is someone who I'm particularly excited perhaps to have on this call because I first heard about Julie, I guess, when I read her book or books, and particularly her book on how to discuss 360 feedback. I felt was like the best by quite a long way books in the space around 360 feedback. There's a few out there. There's not actually that many, but the ones that are out there, there's a real range of qualities. But Julie's really stood out. And so when we got talking and talking about the book and talking about what she was doing with clients, it became clear that there were some great opportunities for us to work together as partners. So Julie, in addition to publishing 6 books now, I believe, including How to Discuss 360 Feedback, has got 20 years of experience helping organizations grow, and she provides bespoke, lively training and focused coaching to her clients, including some of our Spidergap clients as well. So delighted to have Julie on the call, and yeah, Julie, thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome, Alexis. It's lovely to be here.
Good. Well, I'm going to be handing over to you to cover the next bit of content, but I'll be sticking around because at the end, particularly, we're going to have opportunities for a Q&A session in which we'll cover your most difficult questions, or easy questions is fine too, but I like difficult ones, on 360 feedback, and happy to cover anything on all things 360 feedback, both in terms of the outcomes from the 360 feedback review meeting, which is going to be what Julie's going to focus on next, but also any other parts of 360 that we can cover as well. So I'll be sticking around, but I'm going to hand over to Julie now and see you back on the Q&A. Thanks very much, Julie.
Thanks very much, Alexis, and thank you for the welcome, the introduction, and all the excitement. It is indeed lovely to be here. So what we're looking at this afternoon, you'll probably notice from the titles of my books, you know, How to Discuss 360 Feedback and Face-to-Face in the Workplace, that I have a real special interest in conversations and discussions that are meaningful, that have a purpose. And the reason I wrote How to Discuss 360 Feedback was that I couldn't find anything that was similar. So the screen has gone backwards instead of forwards. See if we can fix it. All right, sorry, there we go. So, as I say, I'm very interested in conversations and what goes on. And that conversation around a 360 feedback report can be very, very difficult for the individual. And there's a range of emotions they might feel. Before we get to that, can I just ask you the question, if you could answer for me in the chat box, in your organization, who does that thing if it happens? If it doesn't happen, tell me that. But who actually sits down with an individual and takes them through their report to help them try and make sense of it and try and help them to decide where to go from there? Who does that job? I'll just stick in the chat box. I'd be really interested to know whether it's line managers or special coaches or someone from HR or an external person like me coming and doing it, or a range of the above. Or even if it doesn't happen, that'd be quite good to know. So can you just pop that in the chat box for me, just so that I get an idea of who's doing that kind of thing? Any thoughts?
I can see there's a range of answers here, Julie. So the most common certainly is line managers. So
why aren't I seeing the answers, Alexis? Matter of interest.
You should just be able to click on questions and be able to see that, but happy to go through them if you can't see them on your screen. But so we've got Stephanie and Julie have both said line managers. Jessica said manager and HR. Frank said an external coach.
Yeah. I've just found them. I've got it one line deep and I can't make it grow any bigger, so I'm scrolling through them. Manager and HR.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Line managers, the line manager. Okay, so lots of line managers we've got in there. So it looks like, Alexis, you're going to have to be my helpful assistant here and read these things out to me. Right.
Very happy to do that. Got HR and training and development as well, identified as well.
Yeah, okay. Now that's really useful for me. Okay, so that's useful to know. So now the thing is, if you're in training development or alignment, you might see loads of these things. It's a bit like when we go to the doctor and we've got a lump or a bump and we're really worried because we've never had that lump or bump before. But the doctor's seen loads of them and everyone's got that particular thing going on at the moment. But for the individual, they can have a real range of feelings. So let me know in the chat box, what is the range of feelings that you've experienced or you might get if you're sitting down and someone's going to help you go through a report that's got personal information about you in it? What sort of feelings might there be present? Can you see anything magic coming through, Alexis?
Yeah, so we've got a few. Please post in the question box with your answers, so we can see that Stephanie has said fear, excitement, anticipation, opportunity. I've got David said anxiety.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Oh, it's a
and
shame that I can't see
trepidation.
them.
That's
Trepidation.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I'm.
Julie said nervousness and worry.
Yeah, yeah. So quite a lot up there. There are a couple of positive ones. There's excitement in there. I'm loving the trepidation one because I'm thinking, from my experience, that's possibly one of the most common where people want to be okay with it, but they're a little bit on guard and they're a little bit uncertain. And of course, we get the full range of feelings there. So what we need to think about for for our people that are giving the feedback or are helping people with that. Sorry, it went through twice. Let's go back one. We need to know what actions might emerge from the feeling. So if I am feeling trepidatious, I think that's a word. How would that actually come over in a feedback meeting? And of course, what you get is people that could be cautious and might be guarded. You can see this guy's prepared for anything with his hat and his glasses on. You might get defensiveness. You might get a gung-ho attitude if they're excited, wanted to really go for it. But we get a whole range of actions that come out of our feelings. And of course, people's feelings come from their thoughts, and their thoughts come from all kinds of places. They'll have their own perceptions, their own blinkers, their own filters. They might have had bad experience in the past, whatever it is. So all those kinds of things come through, and our feedback reviewers need to be okay dealing with all those kinds of things. So there's the next slide that jumped ahead just now. So we need to make sure that our reviewers are able to handle emotions, because sometimes you do get emotions. It's been really brought home to me. In fact, I think in the last 2 weeks, I've had tears from delegates 3 times. And in all cases, it was because they were unused to having that space where they could talk about themselves, which I guess I knew in the past, but it's just had a lot of it recently. Sometimes it's really can affect people emotionally when they have to talk about themselves or face things about themselves. Even if they're not particularly negative, it can just be something that sets people off. So one of the skills that our feedback reviewers need is to know how to deal with that. I'll give you a quick bit of advice if you like. So I would give people a bit of space. I'd ask them what emotions they're feeling. And the reason for that is to help them kick their rational brain into action, because sometimes just by thinking, what is it am I feeling and why, it helps us to become more rational about it. Ask them if they want to continue. It is usually, in my experience, a good idea to continue even if people are upset, because if they're upset because they're worried about something, they might be getting things out of proportion, and obviously continuing is the way that you get things back in perspective. But we just need reviewers that are able to handle those kinds of things. So what else do we need reviewers to be able to do? By the way, these are my opinions, so if you want to disagree with me at any time, by all means do, or if you want to stick a question in later, that will be great. So what do I mean by being person-centered? It's a phrase that counsellors use from the work of Carl Rogers, and it's about being non-directive. And what it means is believing in people's ability to make their own right choices. So you might look at someone's report and think, oh, they'd be great in the sales team, or we should get them into finance, or we should put them in marketing or in innovation or wherever it is. But, to some degree, it's good to have ideas, but what really matters is that the other person thinks through, what does this mean for me? And you leave the ball in their court, and that you're facilitating them to think through what it might mean. So that's what we mean by the person-centered approach. And this rolls out in lots of different ways. Here's another thing that is quite important. It's about not transferring your beliefs or limitations. I quite often get people say to me, oh, I couldn't do what you do. I couldn't stand up in front of groups of people. It's not for everybody, but I've been doing it a long time, and we all have our own limitations. And I'm sure I look at some of the stuff that Alexis does and go, I wouldn't want to be doing that, Alexis. We all have our own beliefs, we all have our own limitations, and what we don't want to do is to put those onto the person whose 360 we're reviewing, because it might be that they are going to go higher and further and be braver than we ever were. So we really do sometimes just need to hold back and hold in what we think about something, whether we think something's a good idea or a bad idea or too big a challenge. Some people will rise to it. So just be aware if you're thinking, oh, I wouldn't take that on, or I wouldn't do that. Is that about you, or is it about the other person? We need to think about that. Okay, moving on again. So here we've got a little kitten who's got stuck in the basket. Challenging is one of my favorite topics when it comes to training, because people so often don't have a clue how to do it, and we seem to have this word blindness, that we see the word challenge and what we read is the word confrontational, as if something's got to be angry, and it doesn't mean that at all. Shouting at the kitten is not going to get it out of the basket very quickly at all. It won't help at all. So we're not talking about confrontation, but we're talking about helping people towards honesty. And sometimes when people are wearing blinkers and filters, they do get their thinking in a bit of a muddle, and they'll over dramatize, or they'll see things black or white, or say that everybody hates them or nothing's going right, and these types of things, which we know from the evidence isn't true. So it's being able to reflect those inconsistencies or those distortions back to people in, as you can see, a sensitive and a constructive way. So what I'm suggesting here is that our reviewers need the skill to replace a confrontational tone with gentle curiosity. Now, you can have a tone that is gentle curiosity, but you can still be quite firm in your words, and I think that is the key in challenging. So you can say, you tell me that all of your team hates you, but I can see from your report that 3/4 of them like you, or whatever the evidence is. So it's just presenting the gentle evidence and just holding up a mirror or shining a light or whatever analogy you want on things, so that you can say to people, I'm getting mixed messages here. You say one thing, but the evidence seems to be saying nothing. Can we talk about that? And if you don't do those kinds of things when you're having that kind of conversation with someone, what happens is you're just paying lip service to the whole process, which is a waste of everybody's time. If you've got any questions about challenging, or you think maybe that's something my people need to get to grips on, then by all means do ask me. I'm always happy to help with those kinds of things. So we need to be able to challenge sensitively. And what else do we need? Just pressing the button, wondering if anything will change. Try again. I'll probably go twice now. Right. Okay. Facilitating problem solving and option generation is also where we sometimes get a bit of a hold on things, because people will say, right, there's a clear message here. What I need to do is make sure that my boss understands my role and what I actually do more clearly. And we go, okay, off you go. How are they actually going to do that? There's lots of different ways often of solving a problem. There's lots of options, lots of ways forward. And it's a real important role, I think, that we help people come up with ideas and say to them, what else could you do? What have you thought of? What haven't you thought of? What have you tried? What haven't you tried? Let's try and brainstorm a few ideas and let's get some things going. Because sometimes when we're very busy, we are very prone to going for the first solution. Here's a way of fixing it, let's fix it, when actually there might be an easier or a more elegant or a cheaper or a quicker solution out there. So I think it's important that our feedback reviewers know how to do those kinds of things. I know it gets really frustrating when you've got lots of ideas and can see lots of options and the person you're talking to can't. In that situation, do your very, very best to draw out of them their ideas and the options they think they've got, and then present yours in quite a questioning way, or have you thought about, or can I make a suggestion, rather than taking over the conversation. Okay, so problem solving, option generating, and a very important one, knowing your own boundaries. Now, we all have things that we are happy to discuss, and we all have things that we don't want to discuss that much. And it's worth spending some time for anyone that's giving any type of feedback or any type of review meeting, knowing what your own boundaries are, because otherwise you're not going to know when you're in uncomfortable territory. If anybody's brave enough to say the kinds of things that they're not happy discussing, that would be quite interesting. I wish I could work out.
Or I guess particularly for those people who said that it was line managers that would be delivering it, where do they see the line as being drawn? At what point? At what point should they be handing over? Because I suspect in not all cases are we clear on this. You know, I say we. I'm thinking of myself as a CEO of a company, but it's, as CEOs, as HRs, etc. Are we clear to line managers at what point they should be handing over, particularly when they're having these difficult discussions? Let's have a look.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, please post in the questions area. Let us know what at what stage or what sorts of issues have you come across that you'd say, okay, that it's at that point that the line manager, if it's if in your case it's line manager that are reviewing, or if it's HR, then at what point would HR have to know their own boundaries?
Yeah.
I can see a few answers here. So yeah, so we've got David who says potential gross misconduct. So where you've got
Right.
you've got things where
Absolutely.
it's like so major.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's a
So
um
something where there is a specific process that has to be done right. You don't want to find yourself accidentally dealing with it. I know he's absolutely right. No, you would say, you know, once you're sure what the issue is, we need to find someone else to discuss this with you, and that is fine, whether you need a counsellor, whether you need HR, whether you need whatever it is. So just knowing those things. So it might be about your own discomfort and your own experience. It might be about processes and procedures that need to be carried out properly. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so shall we just quickly summarize how far we have got? Is it going to go? Go on, go on, go on. Right, it's just got a bit of a time lag on it. I'm an impatient person. So really what we've just run through very, very quickly is that reviewers need to be able to take the person through a process of understanding the information in a report, and we'll look a bit more at that in a moment, extracting the meaning from it while keeping it in perspective, prioritizing the issues, and planning the next step. So that's sort of a summary of the skills that we need. Now, what I want to move on to now very quickly, because time goes so quickly, doesn't it? We do want some time left for questions with Alexis at the end. So if the screen will change.
do you want me to? It sounds like you're struggling a bit, Julie. Do you want me to advance the slides for you?
No, it's okay. I clicked on it again. It seems to come back to life now. Okay, so if we have a good 360 report, so we've got a tool that is fit for purpose and good for the job, and if we have feedback reviewers that are well trained, are competent, they're confident, and have got all the ground covered that we've just discussed, what we should get is what good looks like in a feedback review meeting. So we've called that the 10 critical factors for success. So I'm just going to whiz through these 10, and if there's any you want to come back to, then by all means do say, and we'll pick that up at the end. So let's have a quick look at these 10 critical factors for success. So number one is an appropriate environment, and to be honest, that's something which we didn't really cover earlier. It's an appropriate environment for the person receiving the feedback, not you. Now, you might be comfortable working anytime, any place, anywhere, but not everybody is. So spending a bit of moment to think about, is it comfortable? Are we free of distractions? Are we going to get people knocking the door every 5 minutes, or is the phone going? Because I think it's only fair that you give someone your full attention, and you can't do that. People are just saying, boss, have you got a minute, or whatever. So it seems straightforward, but you'd be surprised where sometimes people ask you to work when you're doing this kind of thing. This should fall out of the things we've just talked about. If you have good rapport with somebody, if you've agreed with them what's going to go on, you should be able to set them at ease and address their concerns. And once that is done, they should be able to feel they can be open and honest and park their defensiveness and think, well, actually, this is going to be okay. This person is listening to me. This person's explaining what's going on, and so on. So the report owner feels they can be open, honest, and suspend defensiveness. So if the defensiveness continues, maybe that's an indicator that hasn't been cracked yet. And I should have said, I think, sometime back there, you don't have to scribble notes here. I think Alexis said, didn't he? We are going to send you a checklist. It's got these in a checklist form that you can use. And you can also use them after a feedback review meeting to think, was that in place, to review how it went for your own development, as well as before, to remind you what needs to be in place. Okay, the report is accessed, understood, and kept in perspective. Your feedback reviewers do need familiarity with the tool that they're using, and the reason I like Spidergap particularly as a report is because they've got a summary headline at the top, which makes it really easy to understand the report, and not all 360 reports do that. I mean, when you're a sort of a freelancer like me that works lots of organisations, you see all kinds of 360 reports, and I can remember sitting in a bar with a team of occupational psychologists one night, and they were just saying, I don't understand what these numbers mean. And I thought, well, if they don't, I'm sure I'm not going to. But I had my pride, and I had to sit there until I could actually work out where these strange numbers were coming from, as Alexis alluded to earlier on. Spidergap's not like that, as you're probably aware. It is straightforward, but you do need to make sure that people understand what it's saying. And even if you are noticing themes within it, part of the person-centered approach is let the report holder identify the themes and bring them to the table with your guidance, if at all possible. And if you do need to say, I think we've got a theme going on here, again, do it tentatively and let them sort of take ownership from it. So we've got a nice accessible report, and we've got some kind of agreement between the feedback reviewer and the person, so that they will actually make sure that the path of the time they've got together is clear and agreed. So you might say, okay, we've got an hour and a half together this afternoon. I'm from HR, or you'll probably know if you're the line manager. If you are the line manager for HR, you need to explain what your role is. You need to say whether it's confidential. You need to say what part you might play in helping with action plans going forward, whether you're offering support beyond this hour, whether it's just this conversation. And then you have responsibility for keeping it on track, or if it goes off track, monitoring whether that's a good idea or not. It's the is this the best use of our time question that you might need to stop and say, okay, we've gone off track here, what should we do about this, and make sure we get back on track. So there does need to be a pathway through that is clear to everybody and not lost in the fog. Optimistic realism. So what I mean by optimistic realism, we're not talking about Pollyanna optimism where everything's going to be wonderful now we've got this lovely information. What I mean is a solution-focused approach. It means, yeah, okay, we might have a problem here, but we know there are options, we know there are things we can do, let's just work out the best way forward. That's what I mean by optimistic realism. And another important part of it is things being temporal. That means they're a snapshot in time. Any 360 is a snapshot in time, and even by the time the reports are generated and you sit down with a meeting, something might well have changed. So you need to bear that in mind. They're not cast in stone that this is it forever. They really are a snapshot of when the questionnaire was done. So all things do pass. So that's a general approach. A can-do, positive, we can fix this, but not denying that we might have things that need sorting type of approach. Appropriate level of detail. What we really need here is a picture of Goldilocks, isn't it, where some of the porridge is too hot and some is too cold. Some people do get lost in the detail and and the figures, and sometimes you find you get these broad brushstroke conversations about management or communication that are just too vague and ethereal. You need an appropriate level of detail to make sure it's meaningful, and it's probably worth checking that with the person that's getting the feedback to make sure that the level of detail is not overwhelming them, but is sufficient that they can get constructive meaning from it. Moving on, the report holder feels heard and not hijacked, that they don't feel they're having things done to them against their wishes. This is an outcome of taking a person-centered approach, is that people don't feel that they've been railroaded, and also the report holder should be doing a lot of the talking. Never underestimate the importance of feeling heard. All the employee engagement stuff says that if people feel heard, they feel valued. So I think that's a very important point too. This is another place where Spidergap shines in 360 reports, the gap between where we are now and where we want to be. If you put it in those terms, it makes it quite easy for people to start thinking about action plans and steps towards where they want to be. So a constructive gap analysis. This is where we are, this is where we want to be, how do we get there? It makes it very, very straightforward. This is a more dodgy one we have coming up here, which Alexis alluded to earlier. Priorities of the report holder and others are compared. there is no denying that if it is the line manager, I mean, even if it's an HR person internal to some degree, that that person's priorities may not be the same as the report holder. The report holder's priority might be to leave the company. It might be to move into a different department of the company. The line manager might have a priority of, I want this person to take on this specialism or this report. And you do get conflicts of interests, which makes it quite difficult for line managers to have those conversations, because the chances are of the report holder being honest about, listen, boss, I've had enough of this. I think it's time to move on. It's very, very difficult for a report holder to do. So either the line manager has got to have an excellent relationship and be really gifted in framing it so that it's okay for the person to do that, or you need someone a bit more impartial to have that meeting. So it's definitely a red flag I would raise and say, have you thought this through? Are your line managers aware that this is about development for this person, and what that person views as their development might not be the same as what you think they should be doing? There might be different goals, there might be different objectives, there might just be different opinions. So that definitely, I think, needs thinking about to some degree. If you've got any questions around that, by all means do put them in this tiny box that I can't see, but Alexis has managed to get more joy out of than I have. So that is, I'd be really interested to know your thoughts on that, to know whether it works and whether you think it is working well, because I know I've picked up various concerns about line managers doing feedback reviews. You know, in some respects they are the obvious person, but in some respects they're not. So we've had 9 of our critical success factors, so let's quickly move to the 10th. Except the computer's not doing quick. There it is. So both parties understand what has happened and the way forward. It should be positive. You should, if it's been done well, be able to see some motivation in that person. You should be able to see it in the words they choose, their actions, their body language. And if not, then my question is, why not? Because there's no reason why a 360 review meeting can't be positive. There's no reason. They can either go out there bouncing because they had lots of lovely feedback, or even if they're just going out there with, right, I've rolled my shirt sleeves up, I know what I need to do and I want to make things better, and this is what we're going to do. It's probably going to be some of both. But there should be some determination that this is the beginning of a process where things are going to move forward, rather than we've completed an admin exercise, which is the worst thing in the world. So there we have it. There we have our 10 critical success factors that you'll get in your checklist when it arrives in your inbox soon. So where does all this take us? So what? So what outcomes do we get from a good 360 review meeting? And just a couple of blindingly obvious points here. You're probably aware of this. So this is the one we've just discussed. There is a plan. Next steps are clear, achievable, and recorded. They should be steps for the individual who might have a different agenda to the big organisation, but on the whole, the general overview should be that all those little individual steps feed into the organisational goals, the organisational values, missions, whatever it is that organisation wants to achieve. There should be lots of little steps being taken towards that. We should also have a bucket load of this. Individual self-awareness has improved. Now, as a trainer, I can tell you that the beginning of all learning is self-awareness, because if you don't know where you're at, you don't know where the next step is going to be. So you should be more aware, or an individual should be more aware of their style, what motivates them, what drives them, what's important to them, what isn't, the impact that they have on others. Some people are blissfully unaware of that. And what other people think of them, the perception of others is more transparent. So they really see the piece they are of the jigsaw and how they fit in, and they can think about whether they like the impact they have on others, and if they don't like the opinion that people have of them or people see them, they can take steps to change that. And then lastly, a positive impact on the wider organisation. If people are more self-aware, they are more likely to be more self-motivated in taking steps for improvement with or without a 360 feedback. But in addition to that, you've got all those little action plans that come out of each individual 360, which feed into the bigger picture. And I'm interested to ask Alexis some questions about what he sees as the impact on the wider organisation, because I'm sure he gets to see bigger sets of figures than I do, because I'm much more interested in the impact on individuals and how that works. Okay, so where have we been? Here's our summary of what we've just been through. Give feedback reviewers the skills to guide another person through their report and make sure their confidence levels are okay to do that. There's nothing worse than feedback reviewers going in. If they're slightly tense and apprehensive, it's just going to spread. Use the 10 critical factors for success before and after the feedback review meeting. So to remind you what needs to be done and to judge afterwards, did it work? If not, why not? So you can plug those gaps. And lastly, make sure you follow up to track the impact on both personal and organisational development to make sure that it is worthwhile, that you are getting a good return on your investment of time and money and resources and that kind of thing. So I think that's probably enough from me, don't you, Alexis?
Oh no, I think that's been really useful, Julian. Thanks very much for sharing your insights on that. I think there's a nice mix there of some key points there that I think some people will be familiar with, but there's some nuance and insight there that hopefully I think everyone will be able to take away a couple of nuggets there, even if it's just to give them some structure and some guidance that they can share with their peers or with their line managers that are running review meetings. Because I think often that can be quite a tough exercise, particularly in the backdrop of running a whole 360 project, which might include, at its most extreme, which might even include designing a competency framework to start off with, right through to identifying who's going to complete 360 and then managing it and so on. I think giving line managers or whoever it is the guidance on how they can maximize the outcomes from the meeting is just one other task, and I think you've helped to make that considerably easier for people on this course. So I hope they found it useful. Indeed, please do post in the questions area with your comments, feedback, thoughts on some of what Julie's just covered. We're going to go into a Q&A next, so we can segue into that. But yeah, please do provide feedback on what you've been seeing. I can see some questions already coming through, so we'll cover some of those. Frank highlighted something that earlier, but didn't want to interrupt, which was should we be looking for a good review meeting or an effective review meeting?
I'd be interested. The reason it said it was good, Frank, was just because I was using WGLL, which is what good looks like, which is a common acronym that people use. So that's where the good came from in this thing. I don't know what you think is the difference between a good meeting and an effective meeting. In my mind, a good meeting isn't effective. So what good looks like, it's about what are the signs that tell us we have done well here. So I do mean effective, I guess. I'm just using
cool. So yeah, so you're using it as synonymous. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So we've got some other questions coming in as well. So we'll perhaps to go to those just before we go to the Q&A. So please do keep those questions coming into that questions box. Just to let you know, as mentioned before, after this workshop, you're going to receive a checklist to help you prepare for 360 feedback review meetings, whether that's yourself, your peers, line managers, whoever's doing it. You'll be able to use this checklist perhaps with them to prepare for those 360 review meetings, and as Julie mentioned earlier as well, you can use it afterwards to support a sort of review of how effectively they went, so you can improve future ones as well. So I think that's a useful resource, and we'll share that after this workshop. So now I'd like if people have got questions, which I can see there's some already coming through, so I'll do my best to sort of pitch those up to us, Julie, and we can tackle them. But please do keep those questions coming.
I can only read one line at a time, which is they look like they're brilliant questions, but I can't get the gist of them.
That's okay.
Easily.
I think you just need to click on it. To see the full question, but that's okay. I can tackle those. So one of the first questions comes from Julie.
Yeah, got it.
And in fact, I can see she's corrected herself or edited herself. So I'm just going to read that a second. But you don't. Okay, so what Julie's asking is, what do you do if the line manager's doing the debrief and the goals and ambitions between what the individual wants and what the line manager needs are different? Well, that's a good question, Julie.
It does happen, absolutely it does, and I think there needs to be some just realistic cards on the table saying this is what we can do for you and this is what we can't do for you. Um, Sometimes people do want to go in different directions. I think it's just a case of honesty in the house and not making false promises or not saying we'll see what we can do about it. I do think there needs to be some honesty there, because you can't always please individuals. I mean, even things like training budgets are limited, and I've been in situations where people have bounced out of performance reviews and said, here's 25 things that I want to do, including, several MBAs and, really expensive training. And it's just not possible. So I think feedback reviewers, and it's something we haven't mentioned, they need a good understanding of what the company can provide, whether it's budget or e-learning or external costs, whatever it is, what the company want, and to really encourage people to take on their own learning. I think what you can do is encourage people to do it for themselves, which we should always be doing anyway, whatever we're doing. Even though we do support people with learning in larger workplaces, we should be encouraging them to do it for themselves. So if HR and line managers can't meet their needs, we should be having that conversation saying, how do you think you can move this forward if the company can't help you? They might not like it, but the company can't help them. Does that kind of answer your question, Julie?
Yeah, so I think great answer, Julie C. Julie T, if you're able to post back in the questions, she says yes, thanks. There we go.
Okay.
We've got another question. Frank says, do you recommend providing individuals with their report before the review meeting or present it at the start of the meeting? So we might have different views on this. So I'll perhaps give my answer, and then you can see what you think, Julie. So I believe that it's always worth providing the feedback review, the report ahead of the review meeting to the employee, as long as you give some clear guidance on what you expect them to do with it. And what the guidance that I would recommend giving, and in fact it's in our standard, our default email template. So if you're using Spidergap and you go to share reports when you're in the reports area, you'll see that the email that it then lines up for you to send, which you can customize, will list out a series of things that it recommends that the employee do with it. But basically, at a high level, I'd say it should be to review the report to identify the 2 to 3 areas that they want to prioritize their development on. Because that is ultimately what all the feedback should be seeking to help them to do, is just prioritize a small number of areas that they should identify improvement on. Yep. And that then I would see you, and then you've got a decision depending on the organization. You could either say, and come up with some ways in which you want to address that, and potentially even draft your personal development plan. And in the Spidergap report, for example, there's a template for doing that. Or you might feel that your organization is not quite ready for that, and you might say, in the review meeting with your line manager or coach or whatever, you will put together the personal development plan to address those areas. I think that depends a bit on the organization. I think the key, though, is if you do give it in advance, I do recommend that you do, you just are really clear how they should be using it. Because I see far too often, like documents being shared, reports, etc., with no, and I don't just mean feedback reports, I mean like KPIs and management dashboards, where you're getting data, but no clarity as to what decisions you're meant to be doing with it.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be my view. And then it means that the review meeting itself can be about listening to the person's own take on it, challenging that, and so on, rather than them having to get to grips with it. What do you think, Julie?
I see both sides of the coin, and I think I fudge it in the book and say it depends, which I know is a terrible answer, but it does depend. Under normal circumstances, I think what you've described is absolutely fine, Alexis, but I have worked the other way around, where people have just given me a pile of reports and said, there you go, take them in and talk to them. I think if a company has had a real difficulty or has got a big change and they are concerned about the content of the reports, you need to think, would I rather someone got this information when they're with a sympathetic another person, or have it when they're by themselves? And there have been times when I've sat down with people and they've been a bit shocked or whatever, and we've worked through it. Now that can be a longer job, but sometimes people prefer that because they don't want people to get this and go home and worry all weekend or whatever. I don't think it's particularly a biggie, but as you say, Alexis, if they've read the report in advance and if they've thought about it and they've identified some action points, it can make the feedback review meeting focused, more to the point, easier to keep on target. If you go in and you're having to deal with, oh my goodness, it's terrible, you know, that can take a lot longer to get them back on an even steer. Because if we have, you know, emotional responses, they need dealing with. And sometimes people might prefer to deal with them by themselves, and then they're over it when they come to you, which makes the whole job so much easier. Does that make sense?
Very good. Yeah, it does. I think that's a good, good distinction. Very good. Okay, excellent. Got another question here. So from David, says, just quite a long one. So just paraphrase that. So David's essentially saying that they've been looking at what articulating the benefits of the to the organisation of doing the 360, and as a result, there's a couple of parts to this question. One is, what would you say is the number one reason for doing a 360, and what would you say are the wider benefits for the organisation? I mean, if we start off with you, Julie, what would you say is the number one reason for doing the 360, and perhaps I'll tackle the second part of that question.
Yeah, we're going to come at it from opposite ends, aren't we, Alexis? Because you know, it's my you know, my special interest is one-to-one conversations, because I understand how important it is if people are heard. So I think to give people, each individual, a tool that enables them to increase their self-awareness and know their development needs and have a positive experience, I think is critical. And I see how that feeds into the bigger picture. But of course, if I was a CEO of a big company, I probably wouldn't say that at all, because I probably have a completely different viewpoint. But every organisation is built on blocks of people, you know, and the more motivated, you know, encouraged, enthusiastic people you've got that are very self-aware and know what they're good at, the better the bottom line is going to be.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think as we've worked with quite a lot of organisations at different levels of, perhaps should we say, maturity, we've seen quite a range of reasons for doing 360s. So at the I don't want to say immature end, but at the perhaps at the less progressive end, we tend to see 360s being used as a way to handle or sort of stick a plaster over our employees don't feel like they're getting engagement with like managers or whatever, or they don't feel like heard or whatever. And I think doing a survey after that can definitely help, and you know, the 360 feedback process with review meetings, etc., can definitely support that. I think what I like to see is, and particularly with more progressive companies that they're using 360s, is to support the continuing professional development of their staff, because they see them as the most critical resource and most valuable resource, and in fact they're most leverageable, if I can use that word, resource. Because you know, as someone who you know, I've got a few businesses, including Spidergap, when I'm looking at, okay, so how do I improve my bottom line, how do I improve my return on investment, etc., and so on, I'm looking at one of the most common areas is, okay, what are our processes and our people doing, and how can we optimize that? And I think that can be really powerful. I think understanding that your staff, when they perform better and so on, and that's not just a case of saying, hey, staff, perform better. Instead, it's about addressing the issues that often they don't necessarily see or don't shine a light on. So I think that can be really effective. I think the other things that we tend to see big benefits from doing 360 exercises and supporting that personal development is efficiency, actually, around both learning and development. So we often see organizations where they say, we've got all this e-learning, we've got all these training courses, we've got all these professional and leadership development programs, but they're not getting used to the extent that we'd like. And in fact, you know, if anything, we just seem to be buying more and more of them, or running more and more. And I think what I really like to see is when people use a 360 to not only support a training needs analysis. So, for example, if for those of you that are Spidergap users, you'll be familiar with the group results report, where you can see, okay, across all the people that were assessed in this 360 project, what are the most common areas for improvement? So that enables you to then say, okay, it's communication skills. We need to let's see what we've got in terms of existing communication skills courses and coaching and whatever, or buy some more in, but also actually driving and pointing that demand. So not just about delivering that, but then but helping employees to identify what they should be signing up to or putting on their plan. And I think that can be a really effective way of getting more value out of your learning development spend, rather than just people going to courses because they sound interesting. Instead, they're focusing on the things that matter the most, and I think that's really powerful. So there's a few others as well. There's things like I've seen at organisations like Sony, for example, and we saw it also with I know that like at Facebook and so on, where they are really keen to support sort of succession planning and people feeling like they're moving up in the organisation, despite the fact that it's not necessarily as organisations, they don't tend to have high turnover of staff, they don't tend to have high hierarchies in the business, and therefore there aren't lots of opportunities to get promoted every 12 months. So instead what you want is to partly to improve retention, which is another thing that's often important and dealt with through, or supported through 360s, but to support those staff in continuing their development and their progression, even if that doesn't mean a change in their job title. And to support that through some form of coaching, whether it's through line managers and HR, like Sendu, or Facebook, where they have like external coaches and so on. And I think that can be really, really powerful. It's whenever you look at surveys for the most important things to people, and what is lacking when people leave an organisation, money is and their package and compensation and so on is like third in the list. I mean, it's still high, it's still important, sure. Don't expect it to be 10th, but it's third. Whereas the top two are recognition, so people feeling like they're appreciated and valued. So making sure that managers and so on are showing that they're valuing the organisation, and then progression and development. The fact they feel challenged, the fact they feel like they're working on new things and continually getting better and raising the bar. So so there's quite a range of things there, and I think it does depend a lot on where you're at as an organisation and what problems you're seeking to solve. But I think it's really, really important to get clear on that before your 360, or as part of your planning in 360. That's what's the aim. I can see Julie T has said, I think the issue is sometimes the quality of the feedback provided and enabling employees to feel responsible for their own development. And when the senior management doesn't necessarily role model that.
Yes, yeah. If I had £1 for every time someone said to me, "Is my manager doing this course?" Because it always seems to be the guys at the top that seem to miss out sometimes. Yeah.
And Judy asks, as a result, how, or rather, is it worth it to launch a 360 if you don't get the management to really engage with it, commit to it, and champion it? I know that's something you've got a view on, Judy.
It's not an easy answer, is it? It does depend on the situation, again, without knowing more about it. I think you could say HR would like to do this, and we're doing it for... if you're doing it across a hierarchy, it can be difficult for the ones at the top up. People will often start with a department, might say, the marketing team or the finance department, or some discrete group of people. And if you're doing it about enabling employees to think about their own development and not taking senior management on board, it can be done. It is better if you get buy-in from the top. What is worse, I think, is when the top promise you'll get buy-in, but then they never actually play ball, and that does look a bit daft. It's not easy, but it can be done, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I'd say almost to reference my answer from the other question as well. I think as an HR practitioner or L&D practitioner, I think you probably have a bit of responsibility to say, okay, well, how do I frame what we're doing in the context of the business objective or the problem that we're solving? And getting really clear on that, because then if you take that to senior management and say, let's say that, okay, across the board we're looking to reduce costs by 10%, and currently our staff churn is like 30 or 40%. We believe that as a result, one of the things that we could do to reduce costs of recruitment, etc., is to improve our retention. We think that'll have impacts on all sorts of other areas as well. There's a few things that we can do to improve retention. One of the ways is to support, personal development, continuous improvement, and better communication between staff. So, and that's where we see the 360 fitting.
Yeah.
And I think if you can engage them around a specific problem that's relevant to them, I think that can help with the engagement. And even if they don't then show the support, you can communicate that out to the organisation with the explanation of why, as a business, this is important, not just as an HR exercise.
Yeah, and the book, and I think also the checklist, do talk about understanding those things. Why as an organisation are we doing it? Because you need to be able to answer those questions. Absolutely. And I think what is important, Julie, is that someone is committed to it and with a bit of clout and can champion it. It might not be the people at the top, but as long as someone is actually making sure that it's running, it runs well, then that's the important thing.
Fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we've timed out on the Q&A, but do feel free to. And Julie T says thanks, by the way. So thank you, Julie, and thank you to all the people that have asked questions. Apologies that we're not able to answer them all. Please do. In fact, what I'll do is I'll make sure that any questions that you've posted that we perhaps follow up via email. Any other questions that you've got, of course, you can send it over to us at support@spidergap.com. A couple of other things to mention just before we finish. One is that Julie's very kindly agreed to offer a free one-to-one planning session with Julie if you'd like some help, even just as a sounding board, discussing what your plan is for your 360 project, how you're planning on supporting those 360 review meetings. Julie's very kindly offered that she's going to do a free one-to-one planning session with you to discuss that, and also she'll give you a free copy of her book. If you just like the book and you'd prefer to pay Julie for it, it's available on Amazon. I believe it's about £7.
Yes, £7.
I recommend it. It's a great book. But you will get a free copy of that if you email. Yes, that's right, the Kindle version as well. Yeah, if you would like that free one-to-one session and a free copy of her book, you can get in touch by emailing julie@springdevelopment.net. One other thing is that if you've not tried Spidergap before, or you'd like to learn more about Spidergap, you can sign up at spidergap.com. You can see how it works online. You can sign up and try out the software for free, or you can arrange a demo with a member of our team who can take you through exactly how it works, show you all the features, and indeed help you set up your own 360 project. But thank you so much for joining us on this call. If you've found this useful, if you'd like us to do more of it, if you'd like us to do this on other topics, please do let us know. You can email us at support@spidergap.com. I'd love to do more of these on other topics that you'd like us to cover. We've got other partners, including Julie, that have got huge areas of expertise in lots of other specific areas. So do let us know. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you again to Julie for taking your time on this call. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us today. Julie, you still there?
I'm still here, yeah.
Oh, cool. I was just saying, so thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I sussed the not being able to see the questions thing, but it was hard to fiddle with things when you're actually talking. I think I was expecting responses to come up in the chat box, and they didn't. They came up with the question thing, and I just couldn't find the line to grab to drag it down to make it bigger. And of course, I did it right at the very end, but.
Don't worry about it. Well, thank you very much, and thanks all for joining the call. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. See you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.